I can still remember our initial meetings in the initial Ashreinu office was Rabbi Yudin's attic, or his office where I think a lot of you guys have slept. But certainly a big part of the Ashreinu from the beginning has been Rabbi Dovid Gottlieb, and he's added his unique drive and his unique passion to Ashreinu and helped certainly in our part build Ashreinu to where it is today. So I'd love for you to say a couple of words.
Somehow you're always okay. I know. Before it goes down.
Okay, it's all good. Because I don't know.
I don't think I'll speak as short as Jacob, but perhaps not as long as the keynote. I'll try to. A former member of the Shir, the Major Leagues. And I would just like to thank everyone who joined together from the administration, my fellow Rebbeim, the office staff, the Madrichim, Night Seder staff, for helping make this a really special and wonderful year, which I know will leave me with many memories, as obviously being the unique year in your life that it will leave you. The truth is that, as some of my students in my shir know, I can be pretty intense and pretty focused on what I think is important. Sometimes that intensity gets in the way of other things. My Talmidim like to joke that I'm not aware of 80% of the school. And I'm glad to see that everyone who they told me is in Ashreinu really is in Ashreinu. And even though it became a little bit of an inside joke, which was fine, what I don't know if I always communicated, but I want to use this opportunity to reinforce, it's really because whoever is in my shir, whether it was in the morning shir, or the electives, or the night seder, I really try to give everything I have to you in a way that will hopefully share with you my love of learning and what I always believe could be the beginning of a real love affair that you have with learning. I try to have very high standards for myself. I know I don't always meet them. And at the same time, because I ask so much of myself, I try always to demand from you as well. And I know that sometimes that was difficult. It didn't always fit with the rest of the ethos of the yeshiva. But I hope you know that not only was it coming out of a place of love, but I can tell you, and maybe you don't realize it, but I can tell you, I remember meeting you 9-10 months ago. And there's been a lot of growth in a lot of you. And I'm really happy to see how each of you on your own level and your own pace has really helped make a commitment and help ingrain a little bit of what we've been trying to accomplish. I'd just like to share with you perhaps a story, and a classic story, and then just a message to leave you with. There was a great tzaddik who lived in Yerushalayim for many decades, only recently passed away, whose name was Rabbi Yaakov Galinsky. He was a little guy, like this big. I mean, I'm not exactly tall, but he maybe went up to my shoulders, maybe. I met him once before I met Aliyah. He once spent the Shabbos in Riverdale in the shul that I was at. And he was known as the Maggid of Yerushalayim. He looked like a Yerushalmi, kind of like Rabbi Weglin, but with much whiter hair and much shorter. And he was a big tzaddik, and he was a very good storyteller. But one of the most amazing stories that I ever heard him tell was a story about his own life. Before he moved to Israel many, many decades ago, he was originally from Russia. He was actually imprisoned in Siberia, in one of these labor camps for some terrible crime of waking up, going to minyan, and davening and doing Jewish things. And in the barracks that he lived in, there were many other prisoners, some Jewish and some not Jewish. Some religious, some not religious. Everyone was there for whatever crime they had done to offend communism. And he noticed one night when he woke up in the middle of the night that some Russian fellow who he had never spoken to, who was also in the barracks, that he was also awake. And that behind his bed, in the wall of the barracks, there was like a loose plank of wood. And he took out that plank and he pulled something out of cavity in the wall. Of course, he's fascinated by this. And he sees, slowly but surely, this fellow gets undressed from his prison uniform and puts on what looks to be some kind of a green uniform with some shiny buttons. He's not really 100% sure what it is, but after the man gets fully dressed, he kind of stands at attention, and to no one, because this is the middle of the night, and as far as this man knows, no one's even awake in the barracks, he gives a salute like this. Then he gets undressed, puts back the prison uniform, hides this green whatever it is in the wall, and goes back to sleep. A few days later, Rabbi Galinsky wakes up again in the middle of the night, and what do you know? He sees the same thing. The third time it happens, this fellow notices Rabbi Galinsky awake and staring at him. So after that awkward moment of recognition, Rabbi Galinsky apologizes. He didn't mean to be prying, as it were. You won't tell anybody, whatever you're doing, it's your secret. But if I could just ask, I've seen you do this a few times now, can you tell me what are you doing? So he said, I'll tell you, sure. Just don't tell anybody about what I have hidden in the wall, but I'll tell you. He says, we live in hell. They treat us like animals, and they feed us like dogs. But once upon a time in World War I, I was a general in the Tsar's army. And this is my uniform. I was able to smuggle it in. And every few nights, when I'm feeling so low, I wake up in the middle of the night and I put on that uniform and I salute to remind myself of who I really am. I'm not a dog who has to live in a labor camp. I'm a Russian general. What struck me and has always struck me so much about this story is that even though our lives couldn't be more different and distant from this Russian prisoner, but I think that many of us go through similar challenges. And that is for all sorts of circumstances that sometimes are beyond our control, or at least are beyond us. We don't always know who we are, or even when we know, the world has a way of sometimes making us forget. And I think that as Jacob and as some of the other guys have already mentioned, in all seriousness, humor is a good defense mechanism against seriousness. But in all seriousness, I think all of you at some point, some of you more than others, but at some point this year, all of you, certainly I know the ones that I'm close with, but really I'm sure it's all of you guys, have had opportunity to pause and ask yourself, who am I and what do I want to be? Now I could tell you, both from the guys who I observed and the guys who I obviously interacted more with, that every one of you that I've seen and I'm close with, have had moments where you've really shined. In davening, in chesed, some of the stories you've shared with me, others I've heard from, what was that, Dr. Rubenstein? Nice to meet you. We've known each other for 6 years, but I didn't know that you were Dr. Rubenstein. From Rabbi Gruen, Rabbi Yudin, who are, especially Rabbi Yudin is always like a proud father. Whenever there's some great moment with any one of you, he's always like Sheping Nachas, wants to share the story. You've all had moments in chesed and davening, and yes, in learning in the Beis Medrash, with your rebbeim or on your own. You've all had moments where you shine. And yes, trust me, we know as well. We know it's hard. Right? Those moments sometimes are so fleeting. It's hard to catch them. And then even when we catch them, it's hard to hold on to them. And for some of you, it was a week here or a week there. And some of you put together a few good weeks in a row. And then came Pesach. And then came the brother's bar mitzvah. And these type of things are hard. It's hard to hold on to things, especially when we're moving in and out, and when we're thinking about already what's going to be in the summer and what's going to be next year. We know how hard that is for you to hold on to that. So I want to tell you just one final message, that whether you know it or not, we know who you really are. And who you were at your best, that's who you really are. Who you were at your best is who you really are. And even if it proved at various points too difficult, at least for now, to hold on to maintain, don't forget that truth. Whatever challenges you have, family, religious, school, whatever, even if you're not at your best, don't think that you're anything less. There's this fiction that we hear, sometimes we tell ourselves, our friends, parents who we love and mean the best for us, where they talk about how wherever you're going is the real world, and somehow yeshiva is a bubble and a vacation. And obviously on some level, it is true. Much of life will be more demanding, and there will be things you have to do, and boss is a little less forgiving than Rabbi Yudin and Rabbi Group. There's no question about that. But you have to look at it from a different perspective. That the truth is that this year, with all of the excitement that you guys managed to find, this year was an opportunity, whether you realize it or not, to step out of your usual routine, to be a little bit removed. Again, the iPhones make full removal a little impossible. My guys have heard my rant on this about 15 times. But a little bit removed from your usual routine, from the distractions of, I wouldn't call it the real world, but I would call it the outside world. And with a little bit of distance, a little bit of change of rhythm and pace, that distraction and that veil was removed. And many of you at various points found the real you. You saw yourself just as we saw you at your best. And even though you're going back to different circumstances which may be more challenging, unquestionably, but I know that if you really want it, and if you really remind yourself of who you really are, that you can get back there. And the truth is, if you can accomplish even half of that at the various campuses you're going, that'll actually be a far greater and more impressive accomplishment than even what you were able to do this year. And you can do it. We know you can do it. And I really believe that you know you can do it. Just remember who you were at some point this year when you were at your best, at your most motivated, when you were on fire, at Minyan, at Shir, with the Chavrusas, in love with your chesed opportunities. Those moments, that's who you really are. And even though you're leaving Israel and leaving the yeshiva, those experiences will never leave you. And they should always remain for you as reminders of who you really are. We're here for you. We're not going anywhere. You saw guys who came back to visit. It's a great opportunity to have a home, and Rebbeim will love you. And even if you're not visiting Israel by phone and by email and Facebook and all that other stuff, please be in touch. Please be in touch with us. Ask us questions. Share with us your challenges. And continue to do great things. This really should not be viewed at all as the end, but just the beginning of the next step. And I thank you for all that you've given me this year, and I hope I've been able to give you a little bit as well.